So, all right. So my first question for you is, can you describe your career and your career journey so far?
Sure. So I am a physicist by training. I study in Spain, and after studying physics, I got a PhD also in Spain. And it was in the physics school, but it was not orthodox physics because it was related to networks, like social networks, and also cooperation. So what I did was use game theory, which is part of mathematics, to understand how people make decisions, and in particular, how the structure of the social network that they are part of, it will be like simulating a society, because this was all computer simulations, by the way. So how the structure of the society that they are living in may affect how much they cooperate. So that was what I did. Most people don't associate this to physics, but it was. So that was my PhD. And then after that, I did research at Northwestern University here in Chicago for a few years. And I worked in different research projects, some collaborations with medical doctors, for example, and we looked at I mostly focus on network analysis. That is something that I really like. And for example, we looked at things like how ideas propagate in a network of people that are working together. Or also, I worked on a very fun project about different types of people that you can find that make decisions differently. So we presented them with like different choices and different payoffs. So if you pick this, you may get this, but if your opponent does this, you will get something else. And so they had like a matrix of options, and they had to pick what they wanted to do. And so with that, then we could cluster people into different types of behavior. There were people that were more altruistic, and there were people that were more risk averse, or were more pessimistic, or things like that. So that was really fun as well. So as you can see, like I work on projects very different from each other, because it was a very interdisciplinary lab where I work. So it was really fun. And we did a lot of different research projects. I would say the common thing was we use statistics, we use coding, so Python mostly. We did collaborations with different professionals, with medical doctors. We also collaborated with some companies to obtain some data. And so that was super fun. That was a good time. I was working as a researcher for like 6 or 8 years, something like that. And then I decided to transition to industry. So I left academia and I became a data scientist for a company. I've been in a number of different companies here in Chicago ever since. And every company is different, and every company understands data science in a different way. So, for example, I worked first at Grubhub, which is a food delivery company. And I was doing A/B testing, which means that you present users with two different versions of something, for example, two different versions of a welcome email or whatever. And so then you test which one of the two versions is working better in terms of like whether they come back more, or they click the email more, or they order more times, things like that. So A/B testing, I did a bunch of that. We had very, very big data sets in there. It was millions and millions of people and a lot of orders every day. So we had to handle very, very big data sets. And then after that job, I moved. I'm more interested in data science for social good personally. So I transitioned more towards health related companies. So the first one I worked for was doing what is called social determinants of health. So that is like any things related to health, but there are not like medicine and doctors. Things like your housing, your transportation, your education, the type of food that you eat, like all that type of stuff affects your health, but it's not like medicine. And so we were working with health data to try to improve the overall situation of people that were in marginalized communities, people like homeless or people who were war veterans and things like that. So they had pretty they were in situations where their health was at risk. And so we were trying, with all this data, we were trying to predict maybe like who was at risk of, I don't know, developing diabetes, for example, or who was at risk of being homeless in the near future and things like that. So then the social centers and the insurance companies or the hospitals or whoever could take this information and use it to allocate their resources better so they could help people who really needed it. That was really good. I really like the mission of that company. And then the company that I work for right now, which is called Kooth, Kooth Digital Health, is a company that works with young people, so 13 to 25-year-olds, and we have an app for mental health resources. And so in this job, what I do is a number of different things. But for example, I have helped build a recommendation system because we have content that our users can read, things about how to handle anxiety or tools to help you sleep better or things like that, right? So you have a lot of articles that you can read. And so with this recommender system that we built, we're trying to present you pieces of content that we think you're going to like, right? Right now, we're working on another project that is completely different to this one. It's about trying to understand what makes people either continue using the app or dropping out and never coming back, so we can hopefully help them to stay engaged, because the more they're engaged, probably they're better their mental health is going to get. So we are trying to get them to continue working using the app so they can get all the benefits from it. So that's a little bit, I don't know if that was too much detail, but that's a little bit of what I do. So as you can see, like, data science is very, very diverse, and every company uses data scientists in a very different way.
Yeah, so that was such an interesting career you've had. I see that you had a lot of experience in different projects, and just they were really interesting to learn about. And it's making me want to become a data scientist now because those are some really interesting projects, and it kind of like tests people's psychology and like based on what they want to see or like based on a lot of data that you get from the people, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really fun. If I'm being totally honest, it's really fun, and especially for me, if you can help people in the process, then it's even better. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
So my question for you is, what is a fun fact or interesting piece of information about your career? Anything that you might define as a fun fact or
About my career, well, that's hard. I don't know what to say. Well, I have a lot of fun doing what I do, and that's one of my main drivers is to enjoy and have fun with what I'm doing, continue learning, which is with data science is you always have to be learning new tools, new algorithms, new data. So check and check. And also, it's very important to me to do some social good with my skills. Um, there's data science jobs out there for anything that you want, for any kind of company. So you have to kind of decide what do you want to do, because you could do anything. So for me in particular, it's always been a driver to try to do good. So yeah, I don't know if that is super interesting, but that is definitely something about me. I also can tell you that I've lived, well, many years here in Chicago, but I am from Spain, so I'm always like half of myself is in one continent and the other half of myself is in the other continent. Yeah, and well, now a lot of us work remotely, so that is also interesting because sometimes I work in my current company. I work with people from both the US and Europe, which is also fun. A little challenging because we have a lot of time zones and stuff, and scheduling meetings is a little hard. But I like that it's very international. Definitely, I have met coworkers from many, many countries, and that is something that being an international or a foreigner myself is something that I really like. Having coworkers from all over the place, I really enjoy that.
It was actually really interesting to hear about, and I would definitely consider it a fun fact because I didn't realize that being a data scientist meant that you could be like a lot of different people around the world who are also data scientists, and you can work together with them, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's some, depending on the type of company, there may be like data limitations or like for privacy reasons. Some companies will not allow their data to leave the country, for example, or be used in other, yeah, in other countries or so. If the company is international, probably it will be okay. There are also more restrictions in my current field has to do with healthcare, and so that there are more restrictions for how you can use the data, privacy, and things like that because it's medical data. If you work in other types of companies that don't have that restriction, then it's even more free. But I definitely enjoy working with people from all over the world. That's really fun. Or at least, the US and Europe. That's not all over the world, but still.
It kind of feels like you're traveling everywhere, but you're still at home and you're just
Yep.
like using Zoom or like other forms to like meet people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That kind of relates to our question in a while, but I'll leave that for later about technology and how it has impacted your career. So my next question for you is, can you describe the key milestones that have led you to where you are today? Like anything that has led you to become a physicist or a data scientist in particular?
Okay. Well, I think I always wanted to be a physicist. When I was a kid, I think I wanted to be, I was very interested in like cosmology and astronomy and things like that. So I think that was the initial motivation to study physics. I did study things like relativity and cosmology and things like that. But at some point during my degree, I discovered network science, which is, the study of networks, which can be like social networks or transportation networks or other kinds of network structures. And I thought it was fascinating. And so that made me change from like focusing on the stars to focusing on networks because I feel like they're so interesting and you can study so many things that happen in them. For example, the way ideas propagate or the way viruses propagate through people traveling from one place to another, or transportation networks and how you can more efficiently distribute goods or things like that. All sorts of networks, there's so many out there, and I thought that was fantastic. So that was a big change in the original plan that I thought I had. And then I really enjoyed doing research in academia. I thought it was a luxury to be able to spend your time and get paid for doing research and learning, going to conferences and writing papers and explaining your research to others. That was great. However, I decided at some point that I didn't want to do the tenure track process, which is how you become a professor at a university. And so I didn't want to do that. And I also wanted to stay in Chicago. So I decided to move to industry. So that was another big change in my career. And so then after that, I guess like when you move from academia to industry, you kind of have to start from scratch again because I had already my network of people that I knew in research and stuff like that. And then if you move to a completely different field that is industry, then you have to start from scratch. So that was a little hard, but it was also very cool to apply my tools in a more direct way because when you're in academia, sometimes you write a paper and you found something cool, but then like it may not have like a direct application. Well, maybe if you're studying cancer or something like that, but in the type of research that I was doing, I felt like I was missing a direct application of my research. And so one thing that is very cool about doing data science in industry is that your results will be used by somebody else immediately, pretty much. For example, if you're building a recommender system for an app, it will be used immediately. And if you improve it, it will get better immediately. Or if you're doing some data analysis, somebody in the company will use those findings to change the strategy for, changing the company goals or whatever that is, that you're trying to improve. So it's very satisfying that your research is useful for other people pretty much right away. Yeah.
That was really interesting about how, especially the fact that your research is immediately used for other people to like work on.
Mhm.
And so I guess that kind of makes it a back and forth cycle because once you realize that people see something that's wrong with it, you can immediately fix it, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting too.
Yeah. Oh, and also maybe I know that this is not necessarily about the differences between academia and industry, but that's kind of big for me because I thought I was going to be an academic and then I ended up transitioning to industry. So in my mind, I'm always comparing those two lives, like two separate versions of myself as a professional. So in academia, things move much slower. So a project or a research project can be a year, 2 years, easy until you get your paper done. In industry, things move much faster. It's probably just a couple months tops. So you have to learn to move faster, definitely. I also think that most people in industry, well, you don't really need a PhD to go into industry, obviously. I did because, I was very interested in the research and I ended up, changing directions along the way. But it's not very often that you have a trajectory like mine. And so I don't find a lot of people with research or a PhD in industry, except maybe in the research and evaluation teams, which are like a specific little team. I'm not in that team. I'm in the data science team. And so that also gives me some perspective because I've done a lot of like very serious scientific research before, so I know how to do it. It's just that now I have to do it faster because industry moves much faster. But yeah. And I think finally, one thing that I definitely miss from academia is, well, having more time to do things. It was nice, but also going to more conferences. That was something that I really enjoy. Going to conferences and presenting my work was expected in academia. Well, in industry, some companies allow you to go to conferences, but it's not the majority. It's not very common. Sometimes you can, and that is something that I miss. I've attended a few, but it's not the most common thing. So I miss that a little bit.
I think you're making an important distinction here because there's like both academia and industry in this field of data science and as a
Mhm.
physicist. So you can choose one or the either, or even switch in between, right? And there's a
Yeah,
big difference between the two.
yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, data science is so popular right now that is pretty much needed everywhere. It's just a matter of like deciding where you want to go and what do you want to apply it to. Because like any from finance to like commerce or healthcare or pure research, like anywhere you're gonna need some data scientists. So yeah, it's I think it's a good time for us in that sense, as data scientists.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point you're making there. And so from something you talked about previously, it's related to the next question about technology. So I think technology has a really big impact on a role as a data scientist. And I'm asking you, like, how has technology specific impacted your role and industry?
Okay. Well, I would say as a data scientist, you have to be learning all the time because technology in our field moves really fast. There are new algorithms all the time. And so you have to try to stay on top of new developments. It's impossible to know everything, but at least you should be a little bit familiar with like the important things that are coming out every day. I've been so that on the one hand, but then also I would say one of the the key things that I learned when I was in college, and I didn't realize at the time, but it turned out to be the most important thing, probably one of the most important things I learned, was to code. Um, right now, I code in Python. Most of what I do is Python, and it's like just like the way I think. I think in Python pretty much when I'm working. So it's very, very helpful. The sooner you can start coding, the better. It doesn't really matter what language, as long as you learn to code soon, because then it helps you just think in that way. So I'm lucky that I learned to code originally in C, which is pretty old language, when I was in college, and so that helped me develop like this coding thinking in a way, which is very, very helpful. And then you can just apply it to anything, because Python can be used for it, like infinite different types of problems and things that you want to automate. Yeah, so I would say the common thread is coding, and then there's always data for things, so I'm always thinking in terms of coding and data. But then what changes pretty much every day is there are new algorithms out there, all the time. It's sometimes it's a little overwhelming because there are a lot of them. So I'm not saying you should know all of them, just maybe have an idea of like, oh, there's this classification trees, and there's this clustering algorithm, and there's this regressions, and then there's the whole thing about generative AI, which is like this huge new thing. So getting a little bit of an idea of what the different families of algorithms are and stuff like that. So you kind of know the lay of the land. Keeping in mind that things are going to move very fast. I also don't know what's going to happen, from 6 months from now. Things are moving. Not only they move fast, but they're becoming even faster and faster. Every few months, I feel like things are moving so fast. But I also feel, so that may be a little overwhelming, but I also feel that the human part of a data scientist is also important, and that's always going to be important, because maybe machines can replace some of our tasks, but not all of them, because you still need to use your critical thinking, you need to use your decision making skills, and evaluate like, what's the best type of algorithm that I should use here, or why is it not working for this situation, what could I use instead, that type of thing. Machines cannot do that right now. They just do what you tell them, but they're not free thinkers or creative in that sense, at least not yet. So that's a reason why humans are still needed, no matter how fast technology is moving. And then on the other hand, something that I'm very interested in is the ethical aspect of using machine learning and AI, which I feel as technology moves faster and faster, is something where we are going to have to work as humans to make sure that we use algorithms in a fair way, so they don't create more inequality, they don't harm society. Just because it's new doesn't mean that it's good, right? So we should always continue using our brains, and both our rational brains and our ethical brains both, so we don't apply the latest algorithm just like blindly, right? So
Yeah, and I think you're making a really good point that ethical AI is really important right now, especially with the fact that AI is growing continuously in a rapid rate. Also, the fact that also like what you're saying before about how human thinking is needed for AI to even function. So yeah, that's a really good point. But again, you don't know how quick AI is going to grow. It's exponential.
it is exponential, yeah.
And my next question is something about young people looking to enter your field. So, what advice or resources can you suggest to them?
Okay. Well, I don't know if you guys study coding or learn coding these days in high school. I definitely only heard about it in college. So, as I said, the sooner you can learn some coding, Python is a good language, but if it's a different one, it doesn't matter. It's just important to start thinking in terms of coding. Um, there are boot camps and short like summer programs and things like that are also really good if you want to get an idea of like what is a data science project. um, those are going to be like intense and quick, maybe like 6 weeks or something like that. There are a bunch of programs out there. Sometimes like universities put them out for the summer for high school students. Also, there are a bunch of resources online. For example, Coursera has a lot of free classes on like starting as a data scientist. Not only that, you can also do like data engineering or data analyst, which are like similar things. So definitely, I mean, the internet has so many resources. I can send you, if you want, like an email with a few of them. But yeah, so the sooner you start playing around with data, playing around with Python, and building your own little project with, even with toy data, there is a lot of data sets online that are free. You can just download it and play with them. Kaggle is a good place also because it has like coding competitions, and well, you don't need to compete if you don't want to. You can just do your own project, find data sets there, and start analyzing the data and seeing what's in there, seeing what other people have done with the data set, so you get inspired and things like that. And so you start getting an idea of like what's possible. And also this is very good because if you can show that you already have a little bit of experience and you have a couple of toy projects that you've done, it doesn't need to be like anything super fancy, but I don't know, you get some data set about like movies and the ranking of those movies and the year and things like that. Something, it can be just any kind of data, or like football statistics or whatever. And you do your little coding and a little analysis and stuff. That goes a long way when you want to show for like an internship or something like that. You want to show that you have some experience and your skills already. So I think those are good steps to take. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're making and the fact that you're talking about like programs and stuff, I think there's a lot of materials online nowadays that can teach you how to become a data scientist. And I myself have like been in one of the lot of programs, and there's also like just a lot of materials online you can look for, like even YouTube videos, like for
Yeah.
example, on yeah.
Definitely. So if you just want to go on YouTube, there may be a little too much information, but it's also a good place to start. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. And I have one last question for you before we end. So I think you mentioned some of these earlier, but what are some key skills or qualities you believe are essential for success in your field? And how can students develop them in high school?
Okay. Well, I've mentioned coding many times, so that definitely is important. A little bit of statistics as well. I This is a little embarrassing, but I never took statistics in college because in my physics plan it was not offered. So you could take it, I guess, as an optional class, but it was not part of the plans are also in Spain are very different than in the US. But I never took statistics, which I regret because I had to, over the years, I had to learn it by myself. And so if you can learn a little bit about, things starting like super simple with what's an average, what's the standard deviation, what's the histogram or distribution or things like that. That is super, super helpful. And we use that every day. Um, I think also a very big part of being a data scientist is plotting your results and your graphs in a way that is compelling, that is visually attractive, that is clear. So there are also courses on data visualization that is fantastic if you can get good at that, because then when you are presenting your results to somebody else, that's going to make a big difference. So that is a big one too. Related to this one, I would say this may sound weird, but storytelling is very important for data science as well, because you have your data, you know it inside out, you've done your statistics, your test, your histograms, you have your plots and everything. But that's not enough, because then usually when you're a data scientist, either for a company or doing research in academia, you're going to have to present your results to somebody else. and you need to be able to tell a story about your data. Okay, so I found, for example, I found that in my data set, I have two types of users. Type A does this type of things, and type B turns out that they do this other type of activity, and then they're similar in these ways and different in these other ways. And it turns out that this group of people are totally making this up. They engage more and these people engage less. And it turns out that the first group is the average age is younger and the second group is older, things like that. So you can have some quick takeaways that people, even people that are not technical, can understand. And they're going to remember, because if you just give them, a table with, these are my statistics, these are my averages, these are my whatever standard deviations, people are going to get bored and they're not going to remember what you told them, and they're going to be less likely to use this information and be like, oh, okay, this is super cool, okay, so we can use this for, we're very visual, like we humans are very visual, in my opinion. I also think that people get bored, so you have to try to like tell them things in a way that grabs their attention. So I feel like that also is important. And then finally, we've mentioned this before, but for me, um, data scientists need to care about ethics as well, the ethics of algorithms, and more and more every day, and the fairness of their algorithms and how it may affect disadvantaged people or minorities or things like that. So that is also important, I think.
Yeah, what you're saying is pretty new to me because I didn't realize that storytelling and like having visually appealing graphs was actually really
Oh, big
necessary for
time.
data science. Because I thought it was just about like graphing data, understanding the data, and like kind of sharing the data a little bit. And
Mhm.
like I guess it's a bit more geared towards like having the general audience understand what is going on with your research, and that so that you can have something change and create that change.
Yeah, exactly. You want, yeah, you're going to want somebody to do something with your results. And so to be able to convince them, hey, we should focus on group A because these users are whatever, they're better, they're more engaged, whatever you found. You have to um, have a very simple message, and you have to find a plot, because you could plot things in different ways. You could use a bar plot, or you could use lines, or you can use a pie chart, or you could use a bunch of different colors, the way you label your things. So there is room for a lot of things, and you have to find like what is the style that works best, that is even prettiest, because that also, like, we're very visual creatures, and so if the plot is prettier, people are more likely to pay attention. So um, definitely. I think there was, I don't know if it exists. I will look it up, but I think there was a platform called Data is Beautiful, I think, that had a lot of different examples of like absolutely gorgeous plots that you wouldn't imagine. Like they go the extra mile and they make like absolutely fascinating plots. It also depends on what type of data you have, but like I've used it as inspiration many times, because some people are just masters at plotting data in a compelling and beautiful way.
Yeah, in that case, I guess like if you're good at art, you'll be better as a data scientist. All right. So that was my last question for you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. And
Sure.
I learned a lot about data science today.
I'm
Here,
glad. I'm very happy to help. And let me know if at any time you have more questions for me, or if you want any other suggestions, other, I don't know, websites or things. I can, with a little bit more time, I can compile a list of things for you if you have specific questions. This was super fun. I hope it's helpful for people watching this. Yeah, this is wonderful. I would say that it's a really fun career and you make a difference. So I think it's a cool career. I encourage people to give it a try. If what we've been talking about sounds like appealing to you, I would definitely
honestly,
go
you
for
make
it.
it sound really appealing because I think your enthusiasm kind of like spills out from your speech. And
Yeah. That's also true. Yeah, I like it. You can tell that I like what I do.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.